We are back with our second of 3 SPL sets here today, and we're right on track with our timing because the Olympus Bolts in our first set of the day take down the Leviathans in quick 2-0 fashion. Not something I expected. A Bolts win, sure, that's on the table, but the way it happened definitely surprised me. A couple more close matchups to happen later on today, but very excited here for the next one that we've got. Clearly behind me, you can tell Titans are playing up against the Valhalla Valkyries. Trelly's with me. Trelly, do you echo my sentiment on our first set of the day at least, that either team had a real good shot at winning, but how quickly the Bolts did it was surprising?
Yeah, I would say the Leviathans, they definitely have always had that option to, to lose a game one and then make the adjustments, bounce back, and come back for at least game two. But the Bolts absolutely running over them. Of course, it wasn't that dominant, but the point is a 2-0 that it really looked like they couldn't drop towards the late game. I mean, yeah, I would say no one really expected that. It was just a very dominant performance from the Bolts.
As I've mentioned, first of 3 sets that we have today was the Atlantis Leviathans up against the Olympus Bolts. Coming up next, the Tartarus Titans versus the Valhalla Valkyries. And then to end the day, another great one, the Jade Dragons up against the Camelot Kings. And it's worth mentioning, Trelly, you talk about 2-game sets versus 3-game sets. This Valkyries team already shows us they are no strangers to 3-game sets, have gone to 3 games against both of their previous opponents. Jade Dragons have shown us some longer sets, so have the Camelot Kings. So this day, far from over, plenty of action for SMITE fans to look forward to. And unfortunately for the Valhalla Valkyries, as the standings show us, despite very competitive sets, have fallen in Game 3 in both of the sets that they've played. So down at 0-2, still some momentum to build up, though, moving forward here. Up against, and I'm glad the last desk points this one out, the Leviathans and the Titans, your Worlds finalists from last year. Now, we only have 2 sets played. You can't glean too much, or for some of these teams, only a couple of sets played. Leviathans through 4 sets are 2-2. I think that's more eyebrow-raising. Titans down at 1-1, though, Trelly. I think we're in a spot now, before we move on to this match, talking about this matchup. You're looking at the SPL in general right now. Seems like every team can beat every team any given week.
Yeah, it seems like anything can happen right now. Again, you're sort of just trying to figure out the meta. You're trying to see where your team meshes. Right. Obviously, the Titans right now did just pick up SOT. They're still trying to mesh with their new solo laner, see, what strengths does he bring? Does he bring these sort of different styles of picks? Are we going to have to adapt to that? And that's sort of the meta that we have seen. I mean, SOT's been bringing out these assassins in the solo lane, something that Benji really wasn't up to doing back in the, the last season. So it's a different style. They have to get used to it.
Yeah, and just like I think we've said this about every team so far this phase, where we've seen 2 different Tartarus Titans through our 2 sets. They 2-0 the Jade Dragons in their first set of the year, and then the Titans fall 2-0 to the Leviathans just yesterday. So we have seen the good and the bad from this Titans team so far this year here in Season 9. And the good is still very similar to what it was last year in Season 8. Still a lot of the same strengths for this Titans team. I think SOT has brought a bit of a different playstyle, Trelly, and I'm glad you point that out, the need to mesh and sort of adapt and change around that playstyle. And the team check-in we did with the Titans supported that as well. And so in Phase 1, I think while SOT and the rest of the team is getting used to how the right side of the map might play, this is time for the veterans, for Paul, Aurora, and Cyclone Spin to really step up, to layers to get back to good old-fashioned layers, and so I have high expectations, really for the duo lane specifically here today.
Yeah, I would think that right now, Cyclone and Aurora have always been looking very solid, but have they been able to get off to this, real late-game carry? Right. Not so much. So, as you mentioned, Paul's always been looking pretty clean, taking 5 sometimes bans in the set and still able to find pick that he's able to flourish on. But one player does not a team make. You really have to be able to make those adjustments and say, hey, how are we going to get everyone firing on all cylinders ready to, make these sets happen? So after getting 2-0, they're going to have to, make a strong comeback here against the Valks.
And one player does not a team make, something that can ring true for the Valkyries as well. Benny Q has really stepped up. We've seen moments from the rest of this Valkyries team where they've looked very, very good, very competitive as well. So in the last 2 matchups, Valkyries against Solar Scarabs, that one goes 3, Scarabs win. Valkyries versus Oni Warriors, that one also goes 3, where the Oni Warriors win. We're going to see what this Valkyries team is made of, Trelly, in the last 5 sets of the phase here. They've got Titans, Bolts, Jade Dragons, Leviathans, and Kings to end their phase now in their next 5 matchups. And we have seen some very, very clean SMITE from this Valkyries team. And I think that gives you hope that there is great potential for this team to start taking some sets off teams.
Yeah, they come out swinging, no doubt. And I think it's more so because these teams aren't used to facing this rookie roster. You know, game one, they sort of feel them out. The Valks have been able to take that, and then these seasoned veterans that have been around the SPL for a while are able to make the adjustments and say, okay, we know how to shut you down games 2 and 3. That's not to say that the Valks can't convincingly take a second set. They just have to get used to the league and figure out what it is they need to do to make their adjustments. If they are going to take game 1, and then lose game 2, they have to say, hey, all right, we figured out what we did wrong. We're going to look to, improve on this, that, or the other, and then take this game 3. Obviously, You have Aquarius, you have Wowie. They've been around the scene. They know how to make those adjustments, just can they execute?
Yeah, that's the big talking point here with this Valkyries team, where you have a couple members who have played in the SPL before.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a few members of this team that are in the SPL for the first time. That's an adjustment period. There's time to get up to speed and get the chemistry rolling. One of those players, Kierme, the jungler for the Valhalla Valkyries, getting up to speed in the SPL is very important. He is with me now for the pregame interview. Kierme, first and foremost, congrats on making it to the SPL. It's been a lot of fun watching you guys play so far this year. We've talked a lot about the differences between SEC and SPL, and I want to ask you directly. You're in the SPL now, whether it's preparation, in-game play, scrims, things like that. How different is it playing at the SPL level versus the SEC?
The culture is very different. Of course, obviously, a lot of SPL players take it a lot more seriously,
Sure.
but also the pacing of the games goes a lot faster, and people will punish you within seconds if you make a mistake, where in SEC, you really did get away with almost anything you wanted, right?
Right.
So that's a big learning curve for us. I think one of the biggest things for us is that we're still just having fun and we're learning a lot, and we're not letting the losses get to us, which just means we'll improve that much faster.
Yeah, I want your take on how you're approaching maybe phase 1 in general. I think a lot of the teams around the SPL have said this Valkyries team, they need some time to get used to the SPL in phase 1, then phase 2 and phase 3. Really could be a scary team. Despite losing, you've been able to take games off the SPL team. So how are you approaching just sort of phase 1 in general?
We're definitely trying our best in this phase,
Right.
and it's unlucky that we're losing sets. Like, we have some really ugly games, and then we have some super dominant games. I think it's important to show that we can absolutely go toe-to-toe with all of these teams, and that we are playing very well. It's just about keeping consistent with it and learning why we're winning and following that method still.
You're going up against the Tartarus Titans today, a team that has had some good and some bad so far here in the SPL this year. Talk to me maybe a little bit about your matchup against Layers. How are you approaching dealing with Layers here in this set?
Layers is a talented jungle. I think he's somebody that we're looking out for this set, and I think we'll be able to confidently handle him, though.
Excited to see what you guys bring to the table. Best of luck, and excited to see that first SPL win for you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. The Valhalla Valkyries have shown some flashes, Charlie, and I love every word that I just heard from Kierme.
Yeah, me too.
That is a sharp young man right there. All the words that came out of his mouth, I really resonate with me. They're approaching the SPL with a fresh mindset, and having fun is so important because remember, this roster stuck together through the SEC. They knew that as a roster, they had the potential to be in the SPL, and they stuck together. And you form some great friendships over the years, approaching games like that. And so I think having that behind them is really good. And Kierme didn't seem nervous at all in the pregame interview. And it really stands out there talking about the differences between the SEC and the SPL, realizing, look, we're not a team that's immune to making mistakes, and we've just got to get up to speed with the SPL. And I think this team is capable of doing so.
Yeah, it seems like everything he said, they're holding true, right? They're able to play at this level, and they've shown that. They take these game ones, but on the other side, how do you keep it consistent? How do you say, hey, we were able to outplay you guys game 1. How do we continue that through these 3-game sets? And I like that he mentioned that they're learning and they're not taking the losses too hard, because as the team, that those rookie roster that is yet to get a win in the SPL, you really can't be saying, man, we weren't able to beat this team or that team. You have to be able to make these adjustments, as we mentioned, and I think their mindset is exactly what they need right now.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the fresh look, not getting down, and that's why I asked, how are you approaching phase 1, right? Are you a team that's taking even just a game win in these sets as success? And I think they are. I think they're realizing we can play some very clean SMITE, and we are going to take that as our win right now. Worlds is later on this year. You've got a long time to go until the SMITE World Championship, and while phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, they all matter, if your goal is lifting the hammer at the end of the year, then you realize that this is the time of year to take your lumps and get things rolling. And a team that has taken lumps in one of their sets so far is this Tartarus Titans squad, where up against the Jade Dragons looked very convincing. And then in the Worlds rematch yesterday, up against the Atlantis Leviathans. The Leviathans had a commanding set, taking it 2-0. Will the Tartarus Titans get back on track? Will the Valhalla Valkyries grab their first set win in the SPL as a roster? All that and more will be answered on the other end of potentially just a couple of games here. P's and B's, though, for the first of what could be a 2-game set. Kickoff right now as Daji ends up getting banned away. And so Kirmi already receiving a little bit of pressure here from the Titans and goes right back towards layers as well with Yearlong Shem.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see if the Titans. I was gonna say, man, I didn't even get it out in time. If they're gonna put stock in this Shiva ban, it's because I talked to Kirmi after their Oni Warriors set, and I was like, hey man, you thinking it's gonna be a 2-0? And he's like, yeah, Shiva's OP, man. I'm gonna keep getting this Shiva, and they immediately banned it away, and they didn't give it to him. So I think the Titans did their homework here. They saw what Kirmi was able to do on this Shiva, and they're just gonna put the respect on there, saying, you know, we don't even want to deal with it. Maybe it's just the fact that we haven't seen it enough. We don't really know what it can bring, but we saw what it did to the Oni Warriors, and we're just going to say no more Shiva. So banning that away right away.
Yeah, Shiva was a pick for layers as well yesterday up against the Leviathans. Went 2-1-1 in a loss. And so there were moments of success for layers on this pick, but maybe didn't feel confident or strong enough about the pick to want to leave that open to maybe a pick there for the Valhalla Valkyries. Cleedna, of course, going to get banned away. That's an afterthought at this point. 64% across the SPO, and I expect that number to continue to climb up just a little bit further. So, if you're the Valkyries here, you've already taken a shot at layers. You've taken Cleedna off the table, and that's so strong out of the solo lane and out of the jungle. And so I think good just sort of general bans here from the Valkyries. Could say the same for the Titans. Bellona just so strong in her own right out of that solo lane. Seems like, Charlie, no real specific hardcore bans towards pocket picks for any of these players. Just going down the tier list and maybe outside of the Shiva, as you mentioned, for Kirmi. As Khepri ends up being the final ban here for the Valhalla Valkyries. Umoja left open. And the strong duo lane for the Titans just got a whole lot stronger. Aurora on one of his favorite picks.
I like to see that the Valks haven't put any sort of stock in banning out Paul. Either A, saying, hey, his god pool is so deep, there's no reason that we try to ban it out, or B, maybe that's the confidence of Benny Q saying, I think I know how to deal with Paul in this lane. We are going to, both of these teams like playing through their mid laners. Both of these mid laners have the potential to hard carry games. And I think Benny's saying, give him the Zeus, you know, give him the Morgan, give him anything that he wants. We're going to be able to deal with it and at least try to get me a counter pick or something like that. So first option here, they have 2 picks available. The Valks, will they hold on to Benny Q's pick like they usually do? It's certainly an option.
Now, I think this is an interesting stat where when teams are able to, at least in the 2 sets that we've seen so far from the Valkyries this year, when teams have been able to shut down Benny Q, that's when they beat this Valkyries team. Again, you can't, not all the eggs are in the Benny Q basket, but in the win versus the Solar Scarabs, Benny Q goes 10-0-8, followed by 1-3 and 3-5 in the 2 losses against the Solar Scarabs. In the Game 1 win against the Oni Warriors, Benny Q goes 6-1-6, followed by 0-4 and 1-8 in the 2 losses up against the Oni Warriors. So needless to say, you're going to have a rougher KDA when your team is losing. But those are brutal KDAs for Benny Q, and so when there's a concerted effort put against him there in the mid lane, difficult to come back against. This is a little unique, though. Benny Q getting his pick this early on in a draft, and it's a Zeus. Now, Zeus is strong enough, Trelly, that maybe warrants an early pick, but could open the door to some punishment in the rest of the Titans draft.
I would say so. I mean, picking the Zeus into not only the Umoja, which you saw, you knew the Rivers Rebuke would be there, you knew your positioning has to be top tier if you're able to avoid these walls. Now, we're seeing the Cthulhu, and even possibly an AMC mid. It could be in the ADC role as well. We're going to hold on to that flex option, but more often than not, we see this AMC in the mid lane. It's going to have some solid clear to match up into the Zeus. Now, both of you are pretty immobile. You get some movement speed built into the kit with, you know, AMC having the hives and Zeus having the shield toss. But I think this matchup specifically, it's going to be hard to survive on Zeus just looking at this double guardian composition.
You told me you're a mid laner, right?
Yes.
We replaced aggro into the design team. You come in, so we still gain a mid laner here. Do you enjoy the hunter style of meta out of the mid lane? Like, is that something mid laners in general sort of, would you rather just stick to I mean, now mages are still very viable right now, but it feels like AMC, maybe Chiron, a couple of those ability-based mages are at the forefront. Is that a style you enjoy playing?
I certainly don't. I mean, it's one of those things where if you want to get ahead early. You're always going to outbox the mage counterpart you're against. You can sort of get a lead there, but I just prefer to play mages. That's why I like the mid lane, and now that it's switched up, it really just...
I don't want to play Hunter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I try to avoid ADC if possible for that exact reason, but I think the mid lane mages still have pressure into the Hunters if they can play accordingly, and obviously Zeus, some of the best early clear in the game with the shield toss, so I don't think he'll be sitting too far behind in that lane, but again, the double Guardians are more so what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, Yemoja plus Cthulhu is a difficult front line to go up against. AMC can play more ability-based and can build more ability-based. You can kind of bridge that gap maybe sometimes between Mage and ADC. Bastet ends up being the pick here for Kirmi, is what it ends up looking like, though. With a Cabrakan locked in, who knows? Could be Cabrakan solo, could be Cabrakan jungle, and then Bastet could fill either of those other two roles as well. So you've got a lot of burst damage. Only one game of Bastet played for Kirmi in the 6 that we've seen the Valkyries play, and it was a win in the first game of the phase, first game of the year for the Valkyries. 4-3-8 is what Kirmi put up on Bastet in their first set of the year. And so there's some flexibility there. I want your take on the Cabrakan, though, in general here, Trelly, because I feel like it's a green light or a red light, depending on how some of the early game can go for this pick. We have seen Cabrakan shut down, and we have seen Cabrakans take games over. It sometimes feels like there's not a whole lot of middle ground there. Do you like what you've built around this Cabrakan if you're the Valkyries?
Yeah, the Cabrakan has some success into this matchup. Looking at AMC, the walls are going to be very annoying to deal with. Obviously, Cthulhu, if you're in the position where you're walling Cthulhu, that's one thing, but as we both are looking at this, a Wheelix pick from Layers. That's going to be... There's only one leap at the moment, but I'm looking more so at the knockup. You have Yemoja with the Riptide. Cthulhu, Descendant of Madness has the ability to knock up as well. So this is a draft that's going to have to get online early because, again, a Wheelix more so wants to get active, levels 5 to 12. That's where she's going to find a lot of success because of how much damage she has in the early game, but... On the flip side, it's very difficult to dive Zeus. Even as a Wheelix, he's just going to drop the Lightning Storm, and you're going to have to play around that. You're always going to be taking a lot of damage there.
Well, you saw the one game win, one pick, one win for a Wheelix. That was Layers in a win up against the Jade Dragons. 2-1-7 was his KDA in that game. Cernanos started to rise up the pick list just a little bit here as of late. Some of the buffs that we've talked about plenty have made him a little bit more viable. Still needing what we assume is I was going to say a support pick maybe, but could end up being a solo lane pick if this Achilles gets locked in. And Achilles is locked in. Only one game of Achilles we've seen so far here this year in the SPL. Likely means, Trelly, that I guess Cabrakan would be over in support. A lot of pressure in that lane.
Yeah, I actually like the Achilles pick here. Into Cthulhu specifically, he has a lot of HP, but that threshold for his execute just means it's that much bigger. If you are Aquarius on this Achilles right now in the lane, which we've already mentioned, there is a bit of flex potential with this draft, so we'll have to see where everything goes. But Achilles into Cthulhu specifically, if you can get tanky online and then just sort of play around your carries, executing Cthulhu in the Descendant of Madness is a great way to start the fight. I mean, it's such a big target. It's very difficult to miss that execute. Right. And then, of course, 40% of his HP or 30%, whatever the threshold may be, it's very high for that such a high target character.
Right, and Cthulhu, we saw in our first set of the day how difficult it was to kill off Haddix, right, on Cthulhu. Shortening up the margin that you need, shortening up the amount of damage that you need to kill off such an obnoxious pick to go up against is always going to be beneficial. So I like this from the Valkyries. Do yourself some favors, right? I mean, there are a lot of instances that I'm still worried about for the Titans, but give yourself an out to some of the difficult nature of this Tartarus Titans draft. That said, still won't catch me sliding a Yemoja Cthulhu front line with an AMC and CERN in the back. Though it feels like a lot of this, I mean, Cthulhu and Soul Laners will always do their damage, right? But a lot of this big burst damage is going to be coming from physical sources, AMC, Wheelix, and CERN there as well. What level of concern are you at about the ability to itemize against the style of damage the Titans are bringing?
Yeah, usually when we see this double Guardian comp, it is a hard damage solo laner like Cthulhu and then matched up with another hard damage Guardian, something like a Bacchus. But Yemoja more so wants to look for the lock-in and spam the heals, look for the Riptide to displace your target, but she still does have a fair amount of damage built into the kit if you can just spam the water bubble. So I don't think the Titans are really lacking in the magical damage either here. It's just going to be, will these Hunters get online? Will they get to that late game where they're able to shred everything effectively? Because AMC and CERN, Has a lot of penetration in their own right, just built into the kit with the Stinger and the stances from Cernanos.
Well, and just because of the way the draft went now, we can assume that Bastet ends up in the jungle. Bastet versus Wheelix, I think, has the ability to be pretty interesting here. Layers on one side versus Kirmi on the other. Do you imagine power curve starts to look similar here, Trelly? Do you think both junglers have the ability to get active at a similar point in this game?
Yeah, I think they both are. They both have a pretty strong early game, but my issue with the Wheelix pick is how effective will you be in the late game? If it does get to the point where you do have double ADC, right? But Layers will be vastly ineffective except for just trying to pull in Kirmi off the pounce, which in its own right is really all you need to do late game because you have that double ADC comp, you have that shred, you don't really need that much damage. But the issue is if a Wheelix gets behind, she's very hard to really come back from that. Her damage sort of falls off, especially against a pick like Zeus, where that's your main target, right? You want to try to get this immobile mage and just try to shut him down, but just drop the Lightning Storm. It's hard to get close to Zeus.
Yeah, and I am curious about that because that's how the team fights may look later on here in this game. But it feels like when you've got a mid lane with a Zeus and an AMC in it, there's got to be some emphasis there from junglers, right? Because I think you look back to our last set, Shinta's on the AMC and just gets jumped on by Lasbra over and over and over again in the early game. Got to be similar potential in this one, right? I mean, whether it's AMC or Zeus that's being jumped on, whether it's a Bastet or an Wheelix, do you think the junglers have some eyes for the mid lane here?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, both of these mid laners are going to need some peel to survive. And that's why I imagine the Titans went for this sort of double Guardian style. Maybe Cthulhu and Yamoja just have the range to say, hey, we'll deal with the Zeus. You know, Layers, you can look for that 1v1 jungle matchup. You can try to find a knock-up and a pull, but besides that, don't go towards that Lightning Storm. You really don't want to take that much. So I think that sort of draft that they've went for here does benefit their comp a little bit.
Can the Tartarus Titans get back on track? Can the Valkyries find their first set win of the year? Game 1 will get us closer to some answers.
Well, so far, the Valkyries have been able to find successful game 1s in all of their sets, but haven't been able to get those last couple of games to close things out. It's J-Mac, it's Mifflin, and it's Rosie here in our second set of the day. You're throwing some praise over towards Rosie. I saw the little post you put over on Twitter. Just some nice camera work so far.
What's my Twitter?
Mifflin TV.
That's right. Go make sure you go follow it, everybody in the chat. J-Mac Tucker. With an underscore.
Where is the underscore?
It's between J-Mac and Tucker?
No,
it's at the ends, yeah.
No, it's before.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, man.
That's literally the worst spot you could have put it. Why'd you do that?
Because I had something before that and then underscore, then J-Mac Tucker. But now I got rid of the part that was before. It's all confusing. It's all stupid. I can't even get my actual handle. Let's get back into the game, though, and talk about this one. A very control-oriented comp here out of Tartarus Titans, especially with the roar on this Yamoja, SOT. A lot of space creation that can come from this Cthulhu. Meanwhile, the Valkyries, this Achilles pickup was one that was talked a lot about to try and deal with this Achilles. I mean, we saw last game with the bolts how hard it was to actually kill Haddix. But if you have an execute, you don't have to kill him all the way. You can just get him down most of the way.
Yeah, just do 60% of the work first, and then from there, Aquarius should be able to get a handle on it. Gamma gets canceled out of the Tremor a little bit early. Had he been able to clear that wave, things would have been looking tough as Layers doesn't need to worry. It's Chain Lightning, all right? It's level 2 Zeus. He doesn't have Detonate just yet, but Layer's going to spend a good bit of time just re-sustaining the jungle now already out of potions. That's a concern for a Wheelish. You know, Charlie said it's similar power curve. I'd argue between a Wheelish and Bastet, a Wheelish likely will be getting involved earlier on. So you want this portion of the game to be that point for a Wheelish where she is getting powerful. Level 3, Feather Step is essentially an execute. I mean, watch this damage.
That's a lot of damage. It's also a bees out of the mid laner. Benny Q running as fast as he can.
Done.
Slowed down by the Honey, and one more auto. It's Layers on the board first for the Tartarus Titans.
That's exactly what you want. I thought maybe Layers would have to spend a little bit more time resustaining. Not the case. Was able to heal up very quickly and get involved yet again on the map. That said, Kirmi got to solo out essentially an entire wave. So despite Layers picking up first blood for himself, gold advantage over the Titans jungler, XP advantage now over to Kirmi, who should take over to level 5 first. And speaking of a level 5 Bastet, that is a very strong displacement tool. And looking at the beads from the Tartarus Titans, there aren't a whole lot of them. Maybe you're able to lock down Aurora. Similarly, you could lock down Layers, no CC immunity available to him. Nothing really just yet for SOT. We don't know where he's going. Could be that he picks up a teleport. Could be it's a beads, depending on the pacing of this lane.
Well, we don't know where Aquarius is going either. Neither of these solo laners have picked up their first relic, and that's become somewhat of a common trend as of these last couple of weeks, is these solo laners don't really know what they want to go with first, and because not a whole lot typically happens over here unless one of these junglers tries to get active, it seems like Kirmi maybe waiting for the dash out of SOT before they make an engagement here. Now that it's been used, SOT will be fine, though. Kiermian said a little bit more active towards this blue buff.
Yeah, that's the answer to Cthulhu, who is not the greatest lane bully, is to make sure that he isn't allowed to get that blue buff for himself. Unfortunately for Kiermi, spends so much time hovering nearby. Layers farms up the jungle, then shows up just on time for the blue, so we'll close up that XP gap that Kiermi was able to establish for himself. Worth noting, Layers also got first blood, so he's got a gold advantage, significant leaps for the jungler of the Tartarus Titans, and he is very close to hitting some pretty significant power spikes himself. Gravity Surge has got some great targets. Kiermi is going to give up that opportunity twice, leap in and then the leap back out, both gravity surgeable. Not a word I thought I'd ever have to use. And then you've got some knockups from Aurora that should be able to set you up relatively easily with those Riptides.
That's the fun part of casting. Is sometimes you get to say words that you don't know if they're actually words, but we're going to make them words, by God, out here. So gravity surgeable.
Yeah.
Or just surgible, I guess, in this case. Gravity is the precursor there at the beginning of that one. But Paul over here on this AMC didn't go so hot for Shinto in their previous set. He was kind of getting farmed a little bit early on in the game. Went down like 3 deaths in just as many minutes there, but Paul has been much safer on this AMC, or maybe even just more aggressive. We saw him, he was already going up behind that tier 1 tower to help get that kill on Benny Q earlier on. The Tartarus Titans, even with just that first blood, I mean, able to get a little bit of extra neutral farm across the map. About 1,000 gold up the Titans have. Yeah,
it's going to be much more difficult for the Valkyries to shut down Paul on this AMC. Zeus, sure, has a lot of damage output, hard for him to apply it, and Kiermi going to need a couple more items before he's really able to do it all on his own. Small skirmish around these left camps immediately let up. Kiermi just not interested in fighting when Layers is around. If this Awelish is nearby, Kiermi just getting out of dodge.
Layers actually pulling some nice little tech here. We keep seeing new things come around with these obelisks, these offering camps. You know, we see how the meta has kind of shifted around there. Beginning it was obelisk, 4 minutes in, you get your first set of camps, and you're diving that background. You're going all the way to the enemy obelisk. You're trying to steal those flowers out. And we see that whenever a camp is on cooldown, once that 4 minutes hits and the obelisk spawns in, changes itself up. Layers actually deals like 90% of the camp's damage, lets that 4 minute mark hit, and then only has to deal with slightly enhanced damage out of that camp to pick up that offering there. So smart little plays here out of the Titans jungler.
Man, the Valhalla Valkyries really are just trying their best to put some pressure onto this blue buff, but Layers has been on time every single time. That's a 3-man rotation from the Chaos team just to try and put SOT behind, and goes unrewarded yet again. Kiermi and Gamma sacrificing some of their farm to rotate over. Kiermi just now ticking over to level 5. Layers comfortably at 6. Gamma just now ticking over to level 5. Aurora, well, he's been there for a little while now. The Tartarus Titans getting the better end of this macro farm, and you can see it reflected in the golden experience as well. It's just first blood as far as objectives separating these two squads. Maybe some small macro, the mid camps specifically, going over the Tartarus Titans. And it's just adding up very slowly. That said, the Valhalla Valkyries have got a very nice scaling composition between this Zeus, the Medusa, and Kiermi on this Bastet. They don't need to concern themselves too much.
Benny Q gonna use the beads early on and drop the Lightning Storm at his feet at that tier 1 tower.
Uh-oh.
But all the while, 2v1 kill on the right side of the map. Gamma rotates over to help find a pick up against SOT. Seems to not have that Descent into Madness ready to go at the time of that rotation. Aquarius getting the credit to that kill there. It seems the execute was all that it needed.
Yeah, and a little bit of help from the Kabrakin as Benny lines up against Aurora. Aurora just being annoying. Doesn't even have the Ohm to put any genuine threat out. Doesn't have the ultimate either. Seems like Layers may have been willing to rotate forward, but, well, even with Suku and a speed buff, wouldn't be fast enough to get there in time. But now with Aquarius comfortably in the lead, about 1 level, and already itemizing to deal with SOT in the lane. Runic Shield already picked up. It's going to shred away some of that power, give some protections and some power in your own right. I think now the Valhalla Valkyries, they could just leave him alone over there. Aquarius, he should be able to take that 1v1.
Yeah, we do have Paul back over here into the mid lane. And talking about these mid laners here, I mean, Benny Q has gone for a Vamp Shroud, and I don't know, we haven't seen very much on these mid laners, but we do see it's just an easy rotation over and a perfect wall to catch that dash from SOT, and then the execute after by Aquarius will make sure to finish the job there. So solid kill out of the Valkyries in the solo lane, but going back towards Benny Q here, I mean, Vamp Shroud, we've been seeing it a lot in the solo lane Guardians more than anything else, anytime that it goes over there. Not often that we see these mid laners picking this item up.
No, just a little bit of survivability now for Benny Q. He's got some great transformation, or upgrades rather, for this item. The Blood Soaked in particular, one that I think we will likely see. Generally when it is Vampiric Shroud in that first slot, especially on a Zeus, we do see matched up with it. The standard book build, Book of Thoth into Breastplate of Valor, then Book of the Dead for that additional survivability. Matches up very well with the inherent protections of this item, but instead, double flat penetration, just saying, all right, Vampiric Shroud on its own. That's all I need.
We'll see where the rest of his build goes. I always love seeing the Sacrificial Shroud personally. Doing just a lot of extra damage is nice, but I guess without any actual lifesteal into your build or any kind of self-sustain, it does make it a little bit more de-incentivizing to be losing out on some of your health for that extra boost of damage. We'll see where BennyQ itemizes for the remainder of this game. Paul, meanwhile, goes for a Transcendence first item, nearly fully stacked up.
Oof.
Gamma goes for the ultimate, but comes up just a tad bit shy there. Quick Riptide out of Aurora gets him out of there.
He does. Soul Laners have already made the rotation towards this mid lane. Thought maybe we'd see a heavier skirmish around that camp, but SOT at level 9 doesn't want to line up against Aquarius, who is already starting to deal a ton of damage and has that execute available with all that AoE damage. The Valhalla Valkyries have gotten their mid 3v3. Gotta think they want to take
There
it.
goes in. Aurora's in danger. Aurora's not making it out of there. Detonate from BennyQ will deal the last blow. But Layers, Paul, and Cyclone have all regrouped. But it seems that without their support, they're not willing to dive back in this 4 versus 3. Valkyries find another pick.
But what can they do with this space created? Not many objectives, maybe a dive.
They would just go for the kill, they say. It'll be a Tremors under the tower, but Paul will be fine. Layers gets on out of there. No beads to this Wheelish as of now. So if that ultimate from Kirmi would have connected there, could have spelled the death of Layers, but unfortunately just a tad a bit off the mark.
Does at least cost Layers his blink. Shell lost for Aurora as well as his ultimate, and that is a very long ultimate. Yamoja going to be a couple minutes, so she can get involved yet again. And the Valhalla Valkyries are off to a nice start. They're able to establish some pressure, start controlling those mid camps a little bit more so. You can see it now. The chart's starting to dip down a little bit, find itself back in a neutral state. And I would argue neutral likely favoring the Valhalla Valkyries. It is just so hard to play into a late game composition that just straight up has a Zeus in it on its own. That's how strong that pick is individually, but even the composition built around it is going to facilitate that Zeus very well.
Well, it is traditionally the double flat pen out of the mid lane for these mages. Not going to be the case here for BennyQ, at least not yet. Going for a percent pen, second item. Obsidian Shard will be the item out of the mid laner for the Valkyries. Aurora playing with fire up here. I mean, he is in dangerous territory consistently throughout this game. We saw him at bat camps earlier on. Now we're seeing him just casually stroll through the jungle here on this Yamoja.
Yeah, Aurora's one to play with Wild Abandon. That's been his MO since day one. All the way back since the Fat Chunks days, he's been a very aggressive support player. I am curious how aggressive he's playing with so little ohm, without his defensive relic and without his ultimate. That is concerning. As now, the Valhalla Valkyries start to work their way over towards that right side of the jungle yet again. Think maybe they want to play around. Yep, the Pyromancer pulled out immediately. What's the response from the Titans? Gold Fury pulled out.
And Pyromancer will go down to the Valkyries. That one will be nice and easy. A Lightning Storm expended. But as highlighted, the Gold Fury is going to be accosted on the opposite side. Tartarus Titans with a fast response. They'll be able to tie up that objective for objective. But that'll keep the gold at pretty much the exact same point that we were. Valkyries just slightly bouncing back and forth around that lead. Only about 300 ping-ponging between these two teams.
Yeah, the Valhalla Valkyries doing a very good job matching that macro pressure that the Tartarus Titans have been able to establish themselves. That said, all the kills the Valhalla Valkyries have picked up so far have not found the most ideal targets. Generally, you want to shut down an AMC pretty early on. You'd love to start rotating over towards Cyclone Spin, both playing Hunters that don't have any way to deal with the walls that Gamma is able to spawn up. But so far, not a lot of pressure towards that dual lane. I don't think we've seen a single rotation from either jungler towards the long. And, well, Paul's doing just this. Toss out an ability from downtown and walk himself into the jungle.
Yeah, he'll be able to go back and clear up a lot of these camps here, or maybe just let Aurora take that back camp by himself. Give the support some of their own farm here. But this is something that we talk about with teams like the Titans, teams like the Leviathans, these backliners that like to sit back, farm up as long as they can, and then once we hit 15, 20 minutes, that's when Paul and Cyclone really start getting involved in these team fights. But they're really taking it to the tee here. Double Riptide from Aurora hit the backliners, and then a Riptide of his own to get him in layers away from Gamma, who had begun the chase but wasn't able to close gap.
Look at that vision on the left side of the map. No wonder neither team's been able to rotate over. Both squads have just got a whole lot of defensive wards on the left-hand side. Layers spotted out there, and, well, Wowie fully disengages himself. Cyclone Spin makes use of that time to go ahead and push out yet another wave. Now we get a chance to talk about the builds. Looking at Gamma, that's a little bit unorthodox. Sovereignty in the first slot and immediately into the Breastplate of Valor. He's going to be spawning up those walls consistently, and against this double Hunter composition, he won't be struggling too much in the front line. Unless he gets slammed by Stinger, which again, just has an insane amount of defense shred on it.
And then on the opposite side here for Aurora, Gauntlet of Thieves, maybe a more traditional start. That's the more typical one. But SOT, a 3-man rotation to try and kill this Cthulhu. They only need to get him a little bit lower for that execute out of Aquarius, but a massive triple fear out of SOT won't be enough to say Mach was still able to find that execute at the end of it. But it's a 1-for-1 trade. BennyQ in the mid lane gets shredded down by the Titans.
Yeah, they might be able to go for the tier 2 tower here. Valhalla Valkyries will likely be able to pick up the tier 2 on the opposite side, but this is a much more valuable structure for the Tartarus Titans. Now it's going to be so much more difficult for the Valhalla Valkyries to start a retreat, regardless of which objective they're fighting on. Gamma shows up, takes a little bit of damage, and then disengages himself. Tier 2 falls in mid, as it does in the solo lane as well. So golden experience going to be largely equal. The only separation now is map state, and well, if SOT so chooses, considering how aggressive we've seen from the Valhalla Valkyries have been on the right-hand side of the map, could just freeze his wave. Just keep it exactly where it is and force Aquarius to rotate even further if he wants to A, farm, or B, try and kill SOT again.
Aquarius has been able to get the better end of this lane, not just with the kill earlier, but that one there puts him now level 15 versus only the 13 on the side of SOT, going beyond that level of minute barrier here that we typically talk about for a lot of players. Want to hit that level 20 by minute 20. Could be a little bit sooner if Aquarius keeps going at this rate, but I mean, going that far, going that deep to try and get these minions could pose a problem here for the Valhalla Valkyries solo lane. BennyQ going for a Book 3rd item. Probably too late to go for a Book of Thoth. Unlikely Book of the Dead, just because of the lack of other mana items. So Soul Reaver, most likely the next item up for the mid.
Yeah, BennyQ already putting out a whole lot of damage. Not too much magic defense he has to concern himself with from the Tartarus Titans just yet, but when they do buy it, that Obsidian Shard is going to be doing a whole lot for him, and Soul Reaver should help out with that burst potential. So far, though, haven't seen a whole lot of emphasis from the Valhalla Valkyries in that mid 3v3. We're about a minute away from Pyromancer and Gold Fury respawning, both POIs I'm sure the Valhalla Valkyries would love to group up on, because we are starting to reach that point where this Valkyries draft is really going to start getting dominant in some of these team fights. Keep your eyes on the Tartarus Titans relics, though. 2 shells already picked up, neither upgraded just yet, but you got to think at least one of them is going to be that Phantom Shell. Could put a real dampener on Gamma's initiation.
We already have a Phantom Shell on the side of the Valkyries now. Phantom Shell picked up by Gamma, the support here for the Valkyries side. But we've been seeing this a little bit more now, where some of these mid laners and these carries, you know, they've been shying away from going the Aegis here, maybe a little bit less of a threat to worry about here, as we do see Paul going for that shell. And even a Horrific Emblem. That item has started to make a resurgence back here in the meta as of recent.
It just makes it so much easier to find some of this aggression. The real answer to Horrific Emblem being that Heavenly Sprint. You don't really see Heavenly Sprint picked up too often, and when you do, generally it's the Entangling Wings, and, well, that's not an option just now for the Valhalla Valkyries, as all their relics have already been purchased. So he's going to find some value from it, and you've got some great targets to lock down. BennyQ in particular, going to be one you really want to apply that slow to. Wowie as well, another great target of it. And SOT is not going to have a hard time getting into those backlines. He's Cthulhu. Dash forward, drop your relic, immediately go into that ultimate, and just be that disruption for your team.
Tartarus Titans back over to the Oni Fury. These objectives have respawned, and Titans will be the first one to make a response and call. Gamma tries to go in to steal this one away, drops the ultimate, but it's not going to be enough to steal that one away. Tartarus Titans come up with the Oni Fury, but it's a collapse in by the Valkyries. The Lightning Storm by BennyQ is doing a lot of damage to SOT, who's fallen low. Aquarius tries to get in, but SOT takes down Gamma. Aquarius can't find the execute, but does find the stun after the shield bash. Good enough to get the kill onto one. Ultimate by Kirmi will pick up one, but immediately beads out there by Paul. It's a 1-for-1 trade for these two teams.
Support for solo should favor the Valhalla Valkyries, but the objective at least goes to the Tartarus Titans. 4-stack from the Chaos team on the center of the map, maybe trying to return some pressure into this tower. They know now that Layers is in the duo, but Aquarius left alone.
Aquarius not very tanky on this Achilles. Aurora's bubble is enough to get the kill in this one, and the Titans turn this 1-for-1 into a now 2-for-1 trade. Both solo laners go down, but the added benefit of Gamma, maybe 3. Oof. But a quick Aegis out of Benny off that swarm will make sure that this AMC can't close out that kill.
Just disrespectful rotations there from the Valhalla Valkyries. Aquarius tries to rotate in aggressive into the right side jungle. BennyQ thinks he can walk up alone into mid, and they lose out on some pretty significant pieces. Aquarius' life and BennyQ's Aegis.
Titans do get the Pyromancer. I questioned it for a moment. I was like, wait, hold on. Tartarus Titans are on the order side here. I thought maybe why I was able to steal that one away with the acid spray. Unable to do so here. It's a 3,000 gold lead that the Titans have gotten now with those couple of kills in mid and with that Gold Fury now, Pyromancer up here. Finally, the first significant lead that we've seen this game.
Yeah, but 3,000 gold split between 5 people at the 18-minute mark, maybe not the most significant, where you're getting like a tier 1, maybe a tier 2 item on a couple of your players. Specifically Layers, I think, should be a good deal ahead of Kiermi at this point because he spends so much time farming that left side while there was a small skirmish in mid, and it's reflected in the experience. You see he's 1 level up. He's already got that tier 2 cloak, so some defense for this Awilish, and that's something that Trelly had expressed on the desk was his concern with Awilish's ability to close gap onto this BennyQ, or onto BennyQ. It's not so much that you're concerned about his ability to get there, it's whether or not he can survive once he does. Cloak will help out a fair bit.
Oh, Cloak will also help BennyQ. He started that one himself, so it's going to be a little bit of defense for both the jungle on the side of the Titans and the mid for the Valkyries here. After the Pridwin finished up by Aurora, now going in towards some extra magical defense and a fully upgraded Bracer. Aurora seems to be one of the only supports in the league not only running this Bracer relic, but also upgrading it as early as possible.
It's just so versatile. You save gold the earlier you upgraded it because it acts as a Sentry Ward, and it's a respawning Sentry Ward. And if these fights go long, and they should, because the Tartarus Titans are trying to leverage their sustain, you're just going to, by rote, win some of these vision battles. I mean, if Aurora could just get in, clear that ward, and wait him out, you got to go back to base on the Valhalla Valkyries to pick yourself up another sentry.
Fire Giant started by the Valkyries, but it's a bait forward. They're only going to find Aurora for now, and not a whole lot of damage thrown towards the support. SOT
That's
gets caught
dangerous.
out inside the walls by Cam, a descent to the madness, but SOT has not found a way out of here. It's Aquarius taking him down with the execute, and the Valkyries get the first kill of the fight, but Layers has made their way in and made their way right back out. They're not going to get in here. Rivers Rebuke to hold up, and Aquarius will dash on out using that second shot of his ultimate. Cyclone, though, sticking inside of the Lightning Storm. He goes down, but Layers finds a kill on a Benny in the middle of a 2v5, making a double for the jungle, and now Paul has shown back up. Give him a kill, give Aurora an extra one. It's only Aqua left.
Layers comes up huge for his team there to turn a awful engagement into a passable one. 4-for-2 trade, favoring the Tartarus Titans. Can they find a little bit more? Paul's damage coming up shortly, but because he's tanking the tower, will have to reset, will not be able to chase out any further. Layers resets himself and regroups around the Fire Giant. Paul still relatively healthy and only getting healthier with the help of Aurora. Could this be a Fire Giant pool? I think so.
3 here, but it's 3 strong on this way. SOT gonna be a little late to the party if he wants to show up for this Fire Giant, but he might not even get there in time. It's already down to half. Aqua has teleported right back in. A good knock of the stun, just off the mark. But walking through this ring of fire is starting to do some damage to everybody through, and Aquarius will not make it out of here. A good feather step by Layers to lock him down and shut him down. But that is going to mean the Fire Giant cannot go to the Titans just yet.
It will be a 5 versus 4 once the Tartarus Titans are able to regroup. Aquarius death so desynced. That relic won't be just back up. 80 seconds left on that teleport, so going to be a good while until the Valhalla Valkyries Soul Laner can get involved in the Fire Giant yet again. That said, look at the Fire Giant pit itself. There's nothing the Tartarus Titans can do without the Valhalla Valkyries knowing about it until they clear out that sentry, and I'm sure they will very shortly. Aurora Bracer coming back up in about 15 seconds will act as a buff for his team and as a sentry ward in the Fire Giant pit. Cyclone Spin. Gotta play cautious there. Kiermi, he's got ultimate.
Kiermi does throw out the cat. That'll spot them out. And the Titans will start the Fire Giant once again, but all of the Valkyries will know about this. Aquarius up in 7, teleport down for 45. This is going to be a 4 versus 5 in this pit. Gamma locked down, transformed into the boar and taken down. It's Cyclone Spin to start the fight up. Descent to the madness by SOT, and BennyQ is already gone. Already 2 down on the side of the Valks.
Yeah, SOT not even needed for that engagement. He goes into Descent into Madness just to get the bird's eye view like we've got to watch his team succeed in not only taking the objective, but also in taking a couple of lives. 40 seconds on BennyQ, 20 on Gamma, and the Tartarus Titans are starting to run away with this one. What can the Valhalla Valkyries do? Consolation prize, Primal Fury. Yeah, that'll be real nice to help you out, clear out some Fire Giants later on. The Tartarus Titans, they've got their eyes on the permanent objectives. Tier 2, burning quick, Minion wave right behind them. They're going for the Phoenix.
It's only Aquarius here. The carries on the side of the Valks haven't shown back up. It'll just be the frontliners. And with a minion wave walking in right behind the Titans, this Phoenix will be a foregone conclusion. Tartarus Titans have stripped away everything on the right side of the map structure-wise and can easily make their way over towards this mid. Though without a minion wave will take them a little bit longer, but it's only just now that the carries of the Valkyries are going back. They got the Fury, they got a tier 1 in left, but they're not going to be able to defend this left side Phoenix. Gamma falling low here, does pop the shell to get themselves out. Kirby goes in, but Aurora doesn't take quite enough damage. The cat can't finish the job. Aurora makes it out, and these Riptides are just so clutch out of this emoji to get the team out.
55 HP and 54 more than he needs. Aurora gonna try his best to get the rest of his team out, but it's SOT pulled back in.
It's pulled back in, down to half HP, but an ultimate cyclone won't be enough to save him, but will be enough to at least turn around and get a kill. Layers leaps on out. Wow, he pops the ultimate, but it's only gonna hit Cyclone Spin. Another 1-for-1 trade here as the Valkyries continue their chase.
You know, during that interview, Kirby had said, yeah, it's a much faster pace in the SPL. It's something we're not used to. I gotta think that's the inexperience of the Valhalla Valkyries rearing its head, not realizing that the Tartarus Titans were in a position to look towards that mid Phoenix. Speaking of, Kirby, what are you doing?
That's gonna be Beads. The leap gone. Now it's a leap back, but who's gonna get the kill? It'll be Paul, the mid laner for the Tartarus Titans.
Aqua.
Aquarius walks in, finds a big stun on Cyclone. Beads are down. Detonate does a lot of damage, but Cyclone is life-stealing through all of it. Aquarius can't find the damage. It's a kill for Cyclone and a near deicide here for the Tartarus Titans. Valks only have 1 tower, 1 Phoenix left, but the Titans may just go for the end. It's only 2 left.
Here's the thing about their Fire Giant power play. It's nowhere near over. 2 minutes left for the Tartarus Titans and 5 stacked very shortly. SOT, he's got TP. He'll be there before too long.
Gamma's got ult. He'll pop it onto 3. Big damage right back.
Or not.
At Gamma, though. Titan hasn't taken a whole lot of damage yet. Now, with Gamma gone and Wowie right after, the Titans will deicide the Valkyries. They'll take the Titan, and they'll take game 1.
Hey, SOT gets to do another 4 funsies Descent into Madness to watch the Titan die. This time, the Tartarus Titans, they may have stumbled a little bit throughout the early game. The Valhalla Valkyries certainly bringing that fight, but the game 1 curse on the rest of the SPL now cleansed, I suppose. This is the first game 1 the Valhalla Valkyries have lost.
And not able to find a win here up against the Titans in this very first matchup here. Some signs of light in the early game by the Valkyries, able to at least maintain parity with the Titans earlier on. But once it came to these late game team fights, man, the Titans had it in spades.
They did. The Valhalla Valkyries just were not able to regroup. I feel like it was like 1 pick around the Fire Giant, around that 20-minute mark, and from there it was never another 5-on-5 engagement. It was a 5v4, a 5v3, a 5v1 when Aquarius has to go in and try and slow down the Fire Giant. Not once were the Valhalla Valkyries in position and ready to put up a real defense.
Well, game 1 will go to the Titans. We'll go to a break, and then we'll come back to the desk right after.
Turn again. We turn and turn and feel the heat. Straight from a party. Music's coming your way. I will be smiling. You'll be so fine. Do you believe there's a young world in my heart? Telling me to dance, taking a chance. If I don't cross my T's. I don't dot my I's. I won't say pretty please, or speaking little white lies. I've got a rebel soul. I've got a rebel soul.
Game number 1 between the Titans and the Valkyries is a fun one for some members of the Titans, a fun one for some members of the Valkyries, but the important members of the Titans, the ones who are carrying these team fights, stand strong by the end of it, and game number 1 goes to the Tartarus Titans, though another example of a Valhalla Valkyries team that can compete in these matchups end up falling just a little bit short here in game number 1, Trelly. I mean, Paul has a massive game, Layers has a huge game. It was really the pick and ban counter where we're talking about the Achilles pick into the Cthulhu.
Yeah.
That was working for the Valkyries, but not much else was working for the Valkyries in game 1.
Yeah, it turns out when you put all of your eggs into can we execute this Cthulhu, the carries aren't really getting looked at here, and that means that Paul, Cyclone, and Layers can sort of just pop off. And it started from minute 1 here as Layers getting very aggressive into this Zeus pick, and that's really what we expect him to do. You have this Awilix, you have this early damage. Don't let the Zeus get online and try to find your Blink Feather steps as early as possible.
I love the detonate coming out at the end of that clip, like Paul clearly trying to last hit. And this is just huge from Layers. Look at all of the cleave damage that finds its way through the Valhalla Valkyries. Paul just makes an absolute living in that team fight. And Layers was largely left unchecked here in this one. KDA at 10, 10.5k damage. Might seem unimpressive, but the damage that was damage that was sticking, quick burst damage, executing targets, and Layers. This is the Layers that the Titans need, right? I mean, the Titans have such veteranship on their roster. You know what you're going to get with Paul. Aurora and Cyclone Spin have been around the SPL for a while, and it's Layers that's kind of this extra little spark for this team, and in their success last year was when Layers was playing as well as he was. And so, yeah, SOT got executed a lot, right? But literally everyone else on the Titans put together some real nice games. Paul ends at 5-0-11. Dual lane looks great for the Titans as well. And that's what we were concerned about, wasn't it, Trelly? Where we're saying, all right, maybe the saving grace for the Valkyries is this Achilles. But outside of SOT, it felt like Aurora was able to do what he wanted. Cyclone Spin was able to scale up well in this game. And Paul finally gets his good AMC game after yesterday when the AMC was just kind of jumped on. Feels like a resetting of the feet here for this Titans team after what was a tough set yesterday.
Yeah, I like what Aquarius was doing, like just trying to execute this Cthulhu, but again, when you let the carries free cast because you're looking at that Cthulhu, the team fight is just not going to look that solid.
Well, Jithin says picks and bans are ready, and the world is his oyster, so let's bring in picks and bans here for game number 2. The Tartarus Titans find themselves in pick slot number 1, and the Valhalla Valkyries will have to wait and pick a couple after the fact. If you're the Titans, Trelly, I don't know if you change up too much. I don't know if enough stood out to me from the Valkyries in game 1 that I'm immediately feeling like I need to take away. I mean, the Achilles was the one thing that was working very well, and I think that was more of a counter to SOT on this Cthulhu. And so I think we're in, run-back territory. The Titans can adapt their play style, but I don't think many bans jump out at me that the Titans feel like they might need to take away.
No, definitely not. I think, we talked about this before the set. The Valks really need to get into that mindset where, what did we do wrong? How did we lose those fights? How did we get behind that sort of thing? And then change that in their picks and bans phase. Usually, they're getting a win first before they have to do that. But now, it's do or die time. I mean, if you lose this one, you won't get a second chance to try to adapt. So right now, they have to figure out what is the issue. And right now, banning the meta pick seems to be the start. But I think getting Benny Q on more of a facilitating god where he can go in, like the Jean Kui, for example. He can look for fights all the time. Zeus, sort of a lost puppy if he can't really survive in these fights. You really need your hand held, at least at the early points of the game. But one adaptation they are making is getting rid of Aurora's Umoja.
Yeah, that is a strong adaptation here because it was an insta-lock Umoja. Aurora, one of the best in the league at the moment on that pick, and just the one death and a whole mountain of assists for Aurora in game 1 pretty much tells you all you need to know. 2-1-11 was Aurora's KDA on that Umoja. There's still a lot available as far as support goes that you could look towards with an opening pick. And so 9 games played so far for the Cabrakan. Could be solo, could be jungle, could be support. So some flexibility for the Titans. Just beneath a 50% win rate, and teams continuing to prioritize that pick relatively highly. I feel like I remember it's been a lot of Layers playing this Cabrakan in recent games here for the Titans. Yeah, Layers had 1 game on the Cabrakan up against the Leviathans in that 2-game set, 1-5-8. And
Didn't look great.
Didn't look great for Layers there on that set. But I don't think 1 game necessarily means you have to abandon the pick. So if this ends up going to Layers, I'm unoffended.
Yeah, I mean, taking it away from Gamma, at least, because he obviously wanting to put that Guardian in the solo lane, I mean, the support role as well. It's just trying to throw them off their game a little bit here. But as I like to think of Layers the same way I like to think of Lasber. I talked this a lot. I've seen them whip out these Cabrakans, and it never really looks that great. They're more of these assassin-centric players. They're very mechanically gifted. Cabrakan, not a lot of outplay potential. It's very linear what you're going to do. You're going to 1 in, then hit a 2, probably wall off some carries and start Tremors. That's the idea. So I prefer to see this either in solo or support, but it really just depends on if the Titans think, hey, let's run it back. We have an answer for everything. But on the other side, the Valks, I really think the Zeus, not my favorite pick here for them.
Right.
I think
it was early, right? It was early in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. They want to pick this early because it's highly contested. You don't want to give Paul the option to play it. But I just think when I think of BennyQ, I think of these characters that can go in by themselves, make some huge plays, and that's more of the style I'm looking for from the Valks.
And this is I mean, the Valks. I mean, let's not mince words here. The Valks need to find a way to get their duo lane going. We've already talked plenty about how this is going to be a learning phase for the Valkyries, getting up to speed with the SPL. Any mistakes are going to be punished very quickly, is how Kiermy worded it. The duo lane for the Valks needs to get up to speed here, or once they get up to speed, this Valkyries team will feel a lot better. I mean, it's been tough sledding so far for Gamma, who will likely be piloting this Bacchus, so you get some nice aggression there for him. And then Wowie, who has played in the SPL before, has 3 kills in the last 6 games that the Valkyries have played here in the SPL. A couple of 3-game sets, and then this one up against the Titans goes 0-2-3. And so the dual lane getting those wheels spinning is a good starting point here for the Valkyries. And you give them something aggressive with a Bacchus and a Medusa, should buy them some lane presence.
Yeah, I would say so. Wanting to make sure that your dual lane gets ahead, at least in the early game, is the idea here. And Bacchus Medusa is going to do pretty much that. Obviously, the AMC is out on the table right now, probably still going to Paul in that mid lane, but the flanks potential, we have to admit that it is there right now. And then you look over at the double Guardian composition. This Cthulhu probably going back to SOT, so where's the Cabrakan? Is it going to jungle with Layers? Possibly.
Right.
They're going to be banning away some assassins as well, and the Zeus is going to be gone, so at least we get to see BennyQ on something different in that mid lane. And again, the Valks getting the duo lane started. That's going to be a great opportunity here with this pick. But again, I think they play out of this mid lane so much better. So it really depends what they're going for here.
Right. Facilitating BennyQ is always going to be priority 1 for this Valkyries team. But getting Wowie and Gamma going it should be, I think, priority number 2 here over their next couple of sets. Gilgamesh is the lock-in for Kiermy out of the jungle. So you give Achilles back. That was one thing that worked really well in game 1. Let's give it back. Let's ride that momentum moving into game number 2 here. Though a different look, not the Bastet anymore. Gilgamesh, strong initiator here for the Valhalla Valkyries. And the Tartarus Titans are hovering this double hunter composition yet again. Khepri there is going to make life very difficult for the Valhalla Valkyries in some instances. And the Cernanos is locked in there as well. Khepri into Achilles is always an interesting conversation here, Trelly. Are you surprised that we go Khepri despite there being an Achilles on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Cthulhu is going to be taking the brunt of these executes, so as long as you're able to save your carries from everything else besides the executes, maybe you're just going to be fine in that regard. I think that would be Aurora's play style. I mean, he's very smart with the Scarab's Blessing. He's certainly not going to throw it out willy-nilly. He's going to make sure that if it is being tossed out, it's going to be effective. So probably saying, hey, SOT, we'll try to body block the execute, in our best instance. But if we can't, I'm going to save it for someone else because right now it's just going to be a waste on you. But on the flip side, it looks like that Cabrakan will be in the jungle. Triple Guardian, double Hunter. The Titans are going to want to get active more so in that late game, but they still have some solid presence. As we said, the Cabrakan does get online pretty early. pretty plug and play. You just want to blink in and look for some aggression. Against the Tiamat, though, might be hard to find.
Yeah, Trelly, if I'm saying, all right, let's build a pure protect the carries composition, and my carries are Paul and Cyclone Spin, I'm feeling just fine going into any of these matchups. On the flip side, if the idea, again, is to facilitate Benny Q, you've gotten him on a fantastic later game pick in the Tiamat who can really scale into these matchups, and Benny Q can make some magic happen here for the Valhalla Valkyries. I want to look a little bit at the duo lane, though, here, Trelly, before we get into game number 2. Bacchus plus Medusa, and Gamma and Wowie finding some success. Again, we've talked about it. It should be a priority here for the Valkyries. Going up against what we'll assume is the Kernanos and Kepri. You have to imagine there should be some aggression here for Bacchus and Medusa, some lane priority going up against Aurora and Cyclone Spin.
Yeah, I mean, Aurora's going to have to play very carefully on this Kepri. Bacchus always going to be able to find some... Kepri's a huge target, right? So it's very easy to try to find some of that early CC. I would imagine Aurora either tries to go for a beads or just forfeits pressure in that lane and just says, hey, we're going to get online. Let's just sit back and not really give any opportunity for maybe a frenzy pop into a belch and just giving up first blood, that sort of thing. But Aurora and Cyclone Spin, they've been around the block a few times. I think they know how to play this early game into this very high-pressure composition.
So the big change for the Tartarus Titans is triple Guardian instead of double and the Wheelix in the jungle. Do you imagine the play style looks pretty similar here? The way the team fights look for the Tartarus Titans, Trelly, are very similar here, despite the swapping of Assassin for Guardian. Facilitating the carries is still the name of the game. Do you think team fights look similar?
It will look similar, but a Tiamat is just so much more survivable than Zeus. I think it's going to be hard to just say, hey, let's focus out Benny Q, and then we can start the rest of the engagement because, again, you have that leap, and then when you're on all fours, Tiamat is just so much tankier. It's going to be a lot harder to pick this Tiamat as opposed to the Zeus.
All right, now the jungle matchup does look different, I guess, in this game as well. Game number 2, you're going to have a Kabrakan up against a Gilgamesh instead of Bastet versus a Wheelix. I asked you a little bit about power curves. When are these junglers going to get active? Does your answer change at all from game number 1 to now? Do you imagine you see Layers or Kirmi Trelly finding more success early in this game?
I'm thinking Kirmi has a little bit more pressure right now. The Gilgamesh just, brings a lot to the table.
Time for the Valhalla Valkyries to bounce back in game number 2. Can they do it? Let's find out.
Valkyries need to find their first game 2 win if they want to keep alive in this set up against the Tartarus Titans, who have gone for this, honestly, disgusting triple Guardian double Hunter comp. We used to see this a lot. It was a whole meta a few seasons back, and the Titans really seem to love running this year, Mifflin.
All right, J-Mac, go ahead and lean back, because I'm hopping on a soapbox for just a moment.
Hold on, let me grab a chair real quick.
Okay, well, you don't need to look around. It's the exact same spot it always is.
You're right.
Here's the thing about a Cthulhu and how it just adds so much entropy to a game. On its own, it does. It's something Haddix talked about earlier. Do you focus the Cthulhu once it's at 4,500 HP? If you're doing so, how long is it going to take to kill it? Probably a really long time, and it makes you very likely to lose out on a team fight because all the while he's going for knockups, he's going for damage, he's healing his team. How do you deal with it when there's a Cthulhu and a Morrigan, double Cthulhu? Well, that's super hard to deal with. There's 2 of them now. How do you do it with a Kepri? You can't even kill him anymore, barring Aquarius' ultimate. If it ain't Aquarius, and if Aquarius doesn't have ultimate available, SOT can walk into a team fight, transform, W key with 0 regard for his own life, and just trust that Aurora, with a massive, literal tower to ult, will consistently find those high-impact Scarab's blessings. There are multiple answers to Cthulhu. I think Haddix a little bit glib in his answer. You can either dive past him, which is difficult because Cthulhu can turn on a heal and just act as peel, or you directly kill him. And I would argue that Kepri on his own removes one of those options.
Gamma will still get aggressive back in this duo lane here. And this is the first time we're really seeing the Valkyries duo be able to find any kind of wave pressure. I mean, as soon as I say that, the Cyclone Spin gets aggressive and forces Wowie to dash back towards the Tier 1 tower. But this brings up a really big point there, Dave, especially with Wowie. Wowie in the SCC was a very successful hunter, able to find a lot of big picks for his team, able to be kind of one of those big carries that his team needed. But so far in the SPL has not found very much success at all. It's a belly flop by Gamma. Kirmi comes in, missed the drop kick though. A leap in, Aurora is low. Cyclone trying to body block, but it's a 3-stack on top of Aurora to take him down. The Valkyries will come up big and strike first blood for the jungle.
Aurora was not allowed to move, and it's not because he was stunned. He was, by the way, but it's because he was surrounded by 3 burly Valhalla Valkyries. That was a very tough situation. Good wherewithal from Cyclone Spin to try and stick in there, buy some time, leverage that cleave auto attack that Cernunos gets when he's in melee range. It deals a good deal of damage, but was not quite able to save his support, and then eventually was forced to dash out. It does at least cost Kirmi his blink, so this Gilgamesh can be mitigated for the next minute or so while he waits for that cooldown. And Cyclone Spin, being an ADC, I speak from personal experience here. When you're playing ADC and your support dies and the kill goes to anyone besides the enemy ADC, you don't feel so bad because you're just soloing some waves. You're going to be able to close up that experience gap ever so slightly. And when it's the jungler that gets the kill, what was Layers doing the entire time? Just farming. He's still got the XP advantage.
And this is what we saw last game, kind of on the flip side, actually, where, Layers was able to get first blood, and then Kirmi got the XP lead, but then it turned out that Layers was just keeping that farm going, and still this time, even with Kirmi getting that first blood, Layers still does hold a very slight XP lead. You can see over on the XP needed chart that's been brought up here by Rosie for us. It's actually a chart that we don't look at very often just because it usually moves fairly quickly here, but Layers is very close to their next level up. And then right there, right below,
Whoa!
It's going to be that Kabrakan. Big stinger onto Benny Q, but a quick beads in response means that Benny can leap their way on out of there. And tier 1 tower pressure already, and mid lane pressure over to Paul.
Yeah, Paul might be able to get it down to like around 50%, decides he doesn't want to drop that tower this early on, and I think rightfully so. It's something I always talk about, and I get boos for it. I really like when pro players freeze waves. I really like when they hold it at their tier 2s, at their tier 1s, and force people to step up. Yeah, sure, it's boring, but it's peak performance, all right? Get used to it.
Look,
and Paul doesn't want to open himself up to that.
The caveat is that it's pro players doing it. When you're doing it in your casual obbies, then it's just
I'ma do it.
not so great here. Gamma caught inside the wall as Paul jumped on by Kirmi, and the beads already expended, drop kicked against the wall. And Kirmi picks up a second kill for himself, and a second one for the team now on the Valkyries.
That is an early start for Kirmi out of the jungle, 2-0. Next back should be able to finish up that item, and will very shortly be able to pick up some of his quest items as well. That said, Layers still maintaining parity in the jungle, still able to keep himself within just about the exact same XP range, and it's just fine for now. It really is the onus on to Kirmi to be that one who is getting active, and he's living up to it. 2 kills in 4 minutes so far for the Valhalla Valkyries jungler. But you need to start transitioning those kills into a lead elsewhere. Now it is reflected. Benny Q, 1 level up on Paul. That's massive. Benny Q still has to play cautiously for the next 80 seconds while he waits on his defensive relic to come back up. But that's a small win for the Valhalla Valkyries. I want to see them start moving in towards some objectives, though, because their composition is very good for it. It's going to be a little while. I think maybe 2 or 3 more levels before the Valkyries can feel incredibly confident in that ability. But 1,000 or so gold at the 5-minute mark, still very nice.
It's a nice lead that the Valkyries have gotten for themselves early on. I believe that they wish they would have had maybe in game number 1 to help themselves out. Instead, it was a 1K the opposite way here. Kirmi, though, as you were talking, does hit level 5, so does have access to being able to pick up that quest. And talking about that quest, just for you personally, where's the worst spot that you've ever had your quest spawn as a Gilgamesh?
Well, hold on, Paul in some trouble. Whoa. Gamma drops the Intoxicate, and it's a blink forward from Kirmi. Luckily, Aurora nearby will be able to keep him alive. Worst spot for the quest on release was probably like behind a tier 2 tower. I don't think that happens anymore, so at worst, like at a back camp. Anywhere, it's just distance from base. The closer it is to me, the better.
I had a green buff one time. Enemy green buff was the worst that I'd ever gotten at that point there. But here, Paul able to get out thanks to the help of Aurora on that. Khepri does get that Scarab's Blessing. And then finally, we're seeing a team actually be able to force that ultimate out. There were a couple instances with the Warriors where we didn't get to see too many of them early on. Frenzy popped out. Layers goes in. Doesn't find the stun up against Benny Q. Instead, it's a belly flop onto one. Paul with no beads. Should go down to the winds of Shamash. Picks out of Kirmi. And that's a killing spree. Up for the Valkyries jungler. Aquarius finds one in the fight. And Benny may be the first one on his team to go down unless he can get some help. SOT is pelting him away, but the drop kick against the wall. SOT won't get it. The solar flare's not enough. Benny Q lives through, and Kirmi picks up the double.
5 out of 5 affected kills by the Valhalla Valkyries jungler. 4 of them find their way onto his belt, and Kirmi has got to be feeling good about his performance so far. The Tartarus Titans, on the narrowest of margins, were not able to see one go in, and sometimes you just need to. 0 in the kill column. Goose-egged at the 6-minute mark, and the Valhalla Valkyries looking very dominant already, doubling their gold lead, pushing the experience even further, and we have not even looked at a neutral objective just yet. And their neutral objective pressure is good. Do not get it twisted. They've got decent confirmation thanks to Wowie with Petrify, phenomenal burn thanks to Wowie with Viper Shot, and we gotta talk about that space control. This triple frontline composition, 1 Guardian, 2 Warriors, Kirmi on the Gilgamesh, Aquarius on the Achilles, and Gamma on the Bacchus will be very difficult to walk through for the Tartarus Titans.
We're starting to get a look as to why so many of these Warriors are being banned away from Kirmi. First, the Shiva, and I imagine after a game like this, win or lose, not many teams are going to want to hand this Gilgamesh over to the jungler of the Valkyries. Just all these control style of Warriors that Kirmi's been going for. The Circuit, whenever it was the more tanky Circuit style meta, was one that Kirmi loved going towards. Obviously with this Gilgamesh, a little bit of the Erlong Shen here, and now throwing Shiva into the arsenal. Kirmi really trying to be that facilitator for his team, and so far it's paying off in dividends.
It hasn't established the biggest XP gap. It actually sells his quest item. I believe it was a tier 1 Stone of Gaia, sells it out to finish up that Berserker Shield. That is a massive power spike, and it's something we talk about with Gilgamesh. You're either just getting 600 gold saved if it's an item that you want to build into, or you're just getting like a raw infusion of 300 gold if you're going to sell it. Kirmi takes the latter this time and just gives himself a little bit more gold in his own pocket. And in a level lead up against Layers, who is just only on that tier 1 item, an expensive item, or a first item slot, I should say. It's a tier 3 item, Spear of Desolation, finished up. But very far behind in the build. Paul loses the beats.
Kicked against the wall, also loses the Stinger, missed that one. Up against Kirmi, Aqua still going very aggressive up here by himself, but now he's got backup with Gamma, and Toxin is good. And the ultimate not necessary from Aquarius, who uses to get away. But SOT is right around the corner. Good body blocks inside the mire. Not enough to get the kill, but it's BennyQ diving aggressive onto Paul. That's a double kill for the mid laner, but SOT at least puts the first one up on the board for the Titans. But can they find another one? Gamma low, but not low enough. Tartarus Titans strike 1, but lose 2.
Gotta wonder where Aurora was for the entirety of that team fight. Scarab's Blessing still available, goes unused. 2 of his teammates in the grayscale, I suppose just farming up elsewhere on the map. Speaking of farming, Wowie doing a very good job of it, level 10, as opposed to the 9 of Cyclone Spin. And this is something that the rest of the pros in League have been talking about. When the Valhalla Valkyries are winning, they win clean. They push their leads fast. Kirmi rotates over, forces out the beads, could potentially find more had he had just a little bit more mana, but not the case here. This gold, this experience quickly stacking up in the rookie's favor. The Valhalla Valkyries, very comfortable, but I still need to see that lead push. 3,000 is that alarm bell. Okay, well, we're starting to fall behind in items. Maybe we're about a tier 1, tier 2 item in each roll behind. You get to that 4, 5K mark, that's where you're starting to think, okay, well, team fights aren't really an option. We need to find isolated picks. The Valhalla Valkyries, 1 gold free, 1 Pyromancer away from finding themselves in that position.
This mid 2v2 out of the Valkyries between Kirmi and Benny has been popping here in game number 2. Has been finding them a lot of kills, 5 effective for Kirmi, 4 that Benny has been able to be a part of. And going back to that very first like real big scuffle that we had, the fact that BennyQ makes it out on what felt like probably 10 HP
9
out
more
of
than
a
he
solar
needed.
flare. Just impressive, nonetheless, out of him here, his team, and knowing kind of how much damage he's able to take at this point, or maybe just hoping that he can.
He got lucky.
Hoping that, okay, hopefully this solar flare doesn't get me. Maybe Saw doesn't have quite enough damage to get him there, but BennyQ and Kirmi undying so far, the only one to take a spill, Aquarius.
Man, Gamma level 9, Paul level 10. That should tell you the pacing of the Valhalla Valkyries as we see some significant grouping on the left-hand side. Will get the Oracle Vision, but will not pull out the objective. Cyclone Spin, I suppose, generating enough pressure on the other side to dissuade the Valhalla Valkyries from dedicating that time.
Stinger off the mark by Paul. The Scare's Blessing is here from Aurora to make sure to keep him out, but they are waiting this one out, and there's 3 surrounding this B. No chance that he makes it out. It's BennyQ. Credit to the kill, and now Layers has walked up. The ultimate is down. The Winds of Shamash have been dropped, and Layers has nowhere to go but to the grave. It's another double kill, this time for BennyQ.
I wonder what the conversation is there for Layers. He goes in aggressive, has got to think to himself, wait, Paul, why are you dead? Kirmi still has Winds of Shamash, gets caught out by the Gilgamesh ultimate, loses his life. 2 for 0 trade, and the Valhalla Valkyries will move over to the first objective of the game. And who's going to step up to defend? Not a single soul on the Tartarus Titans, because Aquarius has got Aurora locked down, and, well, Cyclone Spin realizing that without his ultimate, there's not a whole lot of steal potential for him, decides to just farm up the map as best he can. The Valhalla Valkyries, they're looking dominant.
3 levels up for BennyQ in the mid lane. It's not often that we see Paul behind more than a level, especially
Behind
not
it all.
3 levels. Yeah, I mean, even if he ever does get behind, same thing, similar in conversations that we have with Shinto. He's rarely ever behind, and then so far in both of these team sets today on this AMC have not been having the greatest of time in game number 2s at the very least here. Fully stacked Transcendence ready to go for Paul, so big power spike for him, but only on tier 2 of that mace. Meanwhile, BennyQ already double flat pen online.
Yeah, that is an early power spike, and, well, 3-level lead means that all your abilities are going to be dealing a good deal more damage as well. Paul, once he finishes up that next item, will be able to get involved a little bit more so, presumably going to be Crusher, so additional penetration, some attack speed, synergizes very well with the stem that he has, so just standing in range of these hives will mean that he's got decent objective burn, and I'm sure the Tartarus Titans have got objectives on the mind, considering Pyromancer, the only one feasible right now, and relatively easy to clear out with an AMC in mid. That said, do you really want to fight against this Valhalla Valkyries draft, especially with Kirmi picking up a Witchblade in the 3rd slot, going to remove some of that attack speed Paul just spends all his gold on and give himself a little bit more HP. And here's the thing about Gilgamesh, and when you build HP, it just makes you hit harder because of the Sun Scimitar's passive on it, giving you additional damage based off of your own max HP pool. Kirmi, very effective with this build.
Titans try to pull out the Pyromancer here. Roar will walk forward. The layer's only level 11 on this Kabrak compared to 12 for Kirmi. Aquarius finds a stun up against SOT, who dashes in to the opposite side of the map. There's no follow-up here by the Valkyries. They'll just slow down the Pyromancer call by the Titans, and instead it'll now be the Valkyries grouping up right-hand side. Aquarius level 13 on the Aquarius. Not quite the level lead that we saw in the previous game. BennyQ does get hit by the Stinger. Use the beats, going aggressive. Paul has the Scare's Blessing to help him out. A Solar Flare is good. BennyQ should go down with 3, but Kirmi has shoved up the drop kick. Will push them out. Benny walks away from the ultimate out of Cyclone Spin, and the mid laners are both out.
BennyQ takes a 1v1 up against Paul and wins out handily, forces out multiple ultimates from the Tartarus Titan. Cyclone Spin tries to finish off the kill, unsuccessful. Aurora forced to use his to peel out for Paul. Paul at least able to pick up that Stinger, but don't get it twisted, that gets used as well. And despite all of it, BennyQ able to walk on out and maintain his lead. That is a massive win for the Valhalla Valkyries, but it does not come without cost. BennyQ loses out on both defensive relics, Beads and Aegis. So, gotta think, target on his back, Tartarus Titans might just try and do it again.
And Kirmi loses the blink, trying to go and save the mid laner. Paul back here, both relics still up, but they'll be able to get far enough away from the Valhalla Valkyries, who will just grab that mid camp and go back towards their state of farming here. It's a little bit quieter this game. I say that, I mean, we've already got 9 kills to 1. We haven't seen too many deaths in the last couple of minutes. Layers with not a lot of HP will have to go back, and going for a Stone of Binding. I mean, we've been seeing this item kind of pop back up, but it hasn't been very often on these junglers.
Yeah, generally we've seen it in Kabrak and jungle just because you're able to synergize very well with your own kit. Applying CC, gonna shred away some of the protection. So what do you do on Kabrakan? It's blink forward. I hit you with my 1. Oh, okay, you've got less protections. Maybe I hit you with my 2. Oh, hey, another stun. And you also took additional damage. And you've got less protection. So it synergizes very well. And considering Spear of Desolation was the first pickup, such an expensive item, going towards that Stone of Binding in the 2nd slot, it helps out the economy of your build a little bit. A very cheap item, I believe 1,700 in its entirety. So that's very good for Layers to just try and make the most of his lacking gold.
Titans tried to pull the Pyro twice. Couldn't do anything with it either of those times. Now it's the Valkyries pulling this one, and they'll go ahead and drop it. Gamma in the middle of 3. Gamma falling low, should go down here. Paul, credit to the kill, and finally, the Titans are able to strike back in this fight, but Paul has stepped too far forward, and BennyQ has dove the back line to get the kill, but now it's Layers up against, but misses the first stun. Does hit that second one, but BennyQ is fine fighting into this 3v2. Aquarius as his bodyguard trying to back themselves out. But BennyQ and Aquarius are fairly tanky. Kirmi waiting for the opportunity to strike back in. The Winds of Shamash are up. Aquarius should go down here. Big Sun will keep them out. Kirmi finds SOT. Layers cannot find Aqua. And Wowie has rotated all the way from the duo lane to pick up a kill.
Tartarus Titans overconfident in their ability to take that team fight, chase out much too far, and the Valhalla Valkyries are able to turn it around. Thought maybe there'd be an opportunity for Cyclone Spin to get involved, but whereas the Valhalla Valkyries were retreating towards their ADC, retreating towards Wowie and giving him space to get involved, Cyclone Spin was on the chase the entire time, was not even able to cast out an ability, was not able to do any bit of DPS, and in doing so, wastes the rotation, wastes the time of the Tartarus Titans, loses out on a team fight. Now the Valhalla Valkyries on timer could show up to the Oni Fury, who's going to defend from the Tartarus Titans? I'm not sure there's going to be much of one.
Nobody will step forward here. And even taking a look at the relics just from that last team fight, you look over at the Valks and they've got a set of beads from Aqua and a Frenzy pop by Gamma to start that fight out. Other side of the board, every single relic on cooldown aside from Cyclones and Aurora, who just picked up that bracer on that last back there. So 7 out of the 10 effective relics for the Titans used in that fight, and they're the ones who came up empty-handed.
And look at the difference in builds here. Between the ADCs, that is. Cyclone Spin going down that crit tree should help him out around objectives. Will not be too impactful against the incredibly tanky front line of the Valhalla Valkyries. Bacchus, one of the tankiest late-game Guardians in the game, with a lead as well. Going to become tanky much quicker. Kirmi on a frontliner, Aquarius on a frontliner. All those going to be able to mitigate crit relatively well. Whereas on the other end, Wally goes down that kin-size tank shred style, removing percentage HP with every single auto attack. Deals with the triple front line of the Tartarus Titans pretty well himself. Very curious itemization. Wonder why Cyclone Spin decides to go down that crit tree. Maybe looking for some 1v1s in lane or hedging his bets that his team should be able to win out in the fight and he's there to just deal with these objectives. But so far, it's been, well, largely up to Cyclone to find that DPS in the fight. Every time I've seen him land a crit up against Aquarius or up against Gamma, he's been critting for like 110.
Hasn't been getting a whole lot of damage out there. Kirmi, 4th item now after that Witchblade. Shogun's Kasari kind of going towards, what was it, coined the demon build that Panatom put together during the World Championships that Kirmi is going for here. You get your nice pen and then you just go this full tanky attack speed for you, less for the team kind of style of play here. And it's working out well.
Did he call it that? The demon build?
That's what I was hearing across, around maybe like the rank streets. I was hearing things like that. The demon build was coming out there in the jungle.
You sure it's just one people saying like he's going demon mode? Like
Maybe it could have just been the same thing in that case there. But 5-0-4 for Kirmi, 5-0-4 for BennyQ as well. Actually skipped building into that tiny trinket, got the tier 1, and then decided, you know what? A book looks pretty good here instead.
Yeah, just has the goal to pick up that tier 2 and does so. It's a pretty strong tier 2 as well. Gets you a good deal of power. And I believe some mana as well. The Valhalla Valkyries strip away the tier 1 mid tower, back up to the Pyromancer, and we've seen it before. No defense from the Tartarus Titans on these neutral objectives. They will eventually have to group up for that 5-on-5 engagement once the Valhalla Valkyries start looking towards this Fire Giant. But you gotta talk about the cleanliness, the clinical nature of the gameplay so far from the Valhalla Valkyries. They have given over very minimal opportunities to the Tartarus Titan. Maybe one massive one, though.
Nobody here yet for the Valks. It's Gamma now. Kirmi on the way. The
Coin
Fire
toss.
Giant
They're
is
committing.
not going down fast enough. Gamma's going to go in alongside with Kirmi. The Fire Giant is low.
Tough.
The Valkyries seal it away. Gamma still alive in the midst of the engagement. SOT goes up. Descent to the madness. Kirmi boxing out against 3. Might not have much health left. Layers able to pick up the kill. Takes one of the buffs away, but Wowie trades out to make it now a 1-for-2 trade. Aurora on the run. Aquarius finds SOT. The execute is there, just a little shy of finding Aurora, but they should still be able to take down the bug. Make it a double for Aqua and 3 for the Valks.
Both hunters still draw a breath. Cyclone Spin was able to keep his breath to himself thanks to that Aegis. But the Valhalla Valkyries in a coin toss with less numbers are able to take away the objective, put Fire Giant on 3 belts, and start up their siege. Wowie already on the right-hand side should make short work of that tier 1 tower. That said, that was one of the best team fights so far from the Tartarus Titans. SOT creates a lot of space, was able to separate the fight. Might be because it was a 5 versus 3 for the longest time. Once BennyQ and Wowie were able to rotate in, the fight became a little bit more so one-sided. But the Tartarus Titans show signs of life. Maybe the defense could be one spot for them, unless Paul gets soloed.
Benny is just walking into enemy territory by himself. 1v1s up against Paul and gets that kill. Benny with his 6th one up now in this game. Didn't even get the buff. Aquarius is the one who walks over and secures that one instead for himself. But Benny with no regard for anybody at this point.
Yeah, Benny can do no wrong, man. He's 2 levels up. He's already starting to finish off some of these items. Seems adverse to picking up a tier 3. Just buys the tier 2 on the tiny trinket tree. But the Valhalla Valkyries, I think, now in a position to start grouping up and pushing out these towers. Generally, you want to see them group up on the left-hand side, the most valuable Phoenix, for subsequent Fire Giant invades. But it seems like the mid is where the Valhalla Valkyries have got their eyes. Maybe unconcerned with taking a Phoenix on this siege. Only 2 minutes left on the buff as we take a look back at the Fire Giant.
What was it that Kirmi throws that steals it out there? He just walks up and I think he just autoed it to get that kill there.
Oh, it's Phoenix time
Maybe a
now.
walk up right to the Phoenix here for the Valkyries. Winja Shamash dropped by Kirmi, and he'll kick one away. Mid Phoenix goes down, but Gamma should fall in response to this. He's very low in this fight. The shell is already gone, and yeah, Paul will be able to clean up that kill, but the Valkyries make quick work of the Titans mid-bird. But the Titans are not going to give up this chase. They've caught out one, and that's forced the other three to respond to the Valkyries. Aquarius is low. SOT down to half, but Aquarius should be out for now.
That Petrify from Wowie is all that secures Aquarius his escape. We'll see if it'll get him all the way out. Blink forward from Layers goes unrewarded, and 4 members of the Valhalla Valkyries, like bandits in the night, make away with the mid Phoenix. Can the Tartarus Titans find some sort of response to the map? Tier 1 tower crumbles, Tier 2 tower will do the same, but I think that's just about it. Fall back to a Primal Fury, that'll be a decent golden experience swing, and that's just the Valhalla Valkyries not putting enough respect on the initiation potential of the Tartarus Titans. SOT, yet again, gets phenomenal value from that Descent into Madness, just separates the fight, buys some time, and it is very, very difficult to retreat from a Cthulhu who is constantly knocking you up, constantly healing his team, constantly putting out that damage while constantly moving forward. That's a lot of constantly, but it's just true of
It's
SOT.
the nature of the god.
That's just what he does. The Valhalla Valkyries regroup. Fire Giant still on 3 for 30 seconds. Maybe a Tier 1 tower, maybe a Tier 2, but that's about it. That's left in this Fire Giant power play.
But the Valkyries will group up towards this left-hand side. Now that the mid has been completely stripped away, it's only the right side Phoenix and these left side towers. With only 20 seconds left on that power play, should spell the end of it once they grab these two, especially with no Fury left to go back to. The Valkyries could do well with regrouping themselves, getting some of that extra gold online. Winds will be dropped by Kirmi to zone out the Titans. SOT's ult is back up, but he's not going to use it just yet. We'll throw out the Mire initially, and that Tier 2 tower will stand tall. Gamma and Aqua, the ones being chased out by SOT, but the rest of the Titans close behind their solo laner.
Yeah, SOT realizes that his teammate's not close enough for him to try and chase that one out, and the Valhalla Valkyries will be able to retreat safely from this one. Drops a Tier 2 down to 50%, takes a Tier 1, and gears them up very well to start looking towards the Fire Giant shortly. 9,000 gold in the lead, experience not really that impactful, but still in the lead, maybe effectively like 3,000 experience separating these two teams. It keeps counting up even after you're level 20. So the chart, deceptive in the current pace of the game. Valhalla Valkyries, though, I think, confident in their ability to stick around and do this objective. Worth noting, Kirmi has just about finished up his build. Just finishes that starter item, Bumba's Hammer. It was already difficult to kill Kirmi. It's only become harder because he is regenerating percentage HP after every single ability into auto, and, well, Gilgamesh, he abilities into auto just about with the best of them.
And he's got a decent bit of HP built up into that kit, so a lot of extra healing and a lot of extra damage for that first ability on the Gilgamesh. Pyromancer started and Pyromancer finished just as quick by the Valhalla Valkyries. The Fire Giant has crashed back on to this map, and the Valkyries will be there right away to start it up. It's Kirmi and Wowie to begin the Fire Giant. It's already down to about half HP. The Valkyries stole it away last time from the Titans who started it up. SOT will dash forward, but still has that ultimate if necessary for the retreat or for the re-engage. The Valks will stop the initial fight, go back to the fire.
Poor usage of the Berserker there, so that's a good deal of versatility lost to the Valhalla Valkyries. BennyQ sinks some damage into Layers, and is just poking and prodding as of now. The Tartarus Titans trying to work their way into the fire. Too little, too late.
Valkyries will just grab that one. Layers was zoned away by BennyQ earlier on, so nobody able to walk into that Fire Giant pit, or maybe nobody willing, I should say, on the side of the Titans to step up there, especially with the rest of the team so spread out. Mid Phoenix is about to come back up, or the Valkyries could just make their way back towards that left side, finish up the job that they started on Tier 2.
They could. I think more likely they're going to try and clear out that mid Phoenix, though, already weakened. The Valhalla Valkyries have learned their lesson from the last siege. They need to work slowly here, make sure that they're taking away individual resources from the Tartarus Titans. Do not all in engage. If they could just survive the Descent into Madness, it becomes so much more simple for the Chaos team.
Full 5v5 group up for this weakened mid Phoenix. Aqua will dash in first, not find anybody with the initial stun. Afterwards, Aurora gets knocked up by the tornado from BennyQ, but no commit onto the Phoenix. Kirmi instead is now between the two Phoenixes on this left-hand side, dealing with Paul, keeping him distracted while the rest of the Valkyries slowly trickle their way in. No minions to help them out just yet. They still need a couple more seconds.
Layers blinks
Oh,
forward,
Benny!
finds Benny, drops him down, but credit goes to Paul.
Paul finds one. Winds of Shamash drop through. Paul down to half HP, and Kirmi dies in the back line, but that's over half of Kirmi's health. It's a turn back around. Layers finds the kill in the team fight. That's 2 down now for the Valkyries, and the Tartarus Titans in one team fight have completely turned this game back around. Wowie will find the dash out, but how far can Wowie go with Paul chasing him down and SOT to close out the gap? This Medusa should go down once this Aegis falls away.
Paul nearly has the kill returned onto him. Wowie almost able to turn it around completely. Had he killed Paul, they would have removed the opportunity for just this. I think the Tartarus Titans in a position to potentially end the game. It's all up to Aquarius and Gamma to buy some time. 15 seconds left on BennyQ, 20 seconds left on Kirmi.
No minions for the Titans. It's going to be a little slow for them to burn it out. 10 more seconds now for BennyQ. The Tartarus Titans might not be able to end this now. Paul is low, and the Phoenix goes down just before Benny respawns in. So the Titans able to defend their own mid-Phoenix in the 5v5 versus the Valkyries, get 3 kills during the fight, and then instead now push down the Valks mid-Phoenix.
Gotta give credit to Layers, who sets it all up. Blinks in onto BennyQ, removes him from the map expeditiously. Benny doesn't even get the Aegis off. It's a beads leap away and dies to the dot damage from Paul, who had slammed him with a stinger off the initiation. Tartarus Titans proving why you have to earn every single win against this team from the brink, able to defend a hobbled mid-Phoenix, keep their bird alive, and win the team fight handily. The Valhalla Valkyries find themselves now in a position where they are dead even against the runners-up for the World Championship.
Now, I'm not sure if Benny just didn't have his Aegis available at the time, was still on cooldown, or if he just didn't elect to use it, or maybe just didn't expect the damage flying back
midair.
out. He was gone in an instant. The moment that fight started up, BennyQ was basically gone here. Paul doesn't have his relics for another 30 seconds, but the Titans don't necessarily need to worry about that. They can just go ahead, take this Primal Fury, and make their offense at the next Fire Giant that much more potent, grabbing this objective off the map and closing up this lead a bit. I mean, Valkyries were pushing near 10,000 gold in the lead earlier on, and now it's closed itself down. Only 6,000, but it's still only 6,000 between them.
Yeah, here's the thing about 6,000 gold at the 29, 30-ish minute mark. It might as well be like 300 gold at the 2-minute mark, right? It is insignificant a lead. Maybe some tier 6 items just now starting to be finished up for the Tartarus Titans. Worth noting, Layers does go for a very glass cannon style build. Polynomicon as the last selection. Watch him in these team fights. Layers' job is simple. It is one route. Blink in, find a priority target, either TKO him or KO him, and then die. It does not matter if Layers survives the fight. If he does, great. That's awesome. But it's not on his mind. He is just there to get high-value trades.
The true assassin mentality here on this Kabrakan. We'll see if Layers can find anything in the jungle. Starting up around the Fire Giant. 30 seconds-ish until that one comes back. A little closer to 40 there. As you check the timer on the top. The Titans are the one pushing themselves forward up into Valkyrie's territory. They're the ones who have this pressure at the Fire Giant pit, and they're the ones who get the Pyromancer to start this fight out.
Pyromancer dropped down. The Tartarus Titans are further forward on the defense than we've seen just about any time up until this point in the match, are able to at least lock eyes with the Fire Giant. There's Aurora's signature drop. Bracer drop down should act as a ward, but also give your team a little bit more power and get them ready for the team fight. Defensive positioning established by the veterans in the league, and the Valhalla Valkyries going to have a harder time fighting in. That said, we've seen what the Tartarus Titans are capable of do in the defensive positioning around their bird. Can they do it in neutral territory? That's yet to be seen.
Titans know that Kirmi was a little further away from the fight in that mid lane as he was pushing up those minions. But now the Titans still hold that advantage. Enhanced Fire Giant is on the map and started up by Cyclone Spin of the Tartarus Titans. Aquarius will walk forward. BennyQ will pelt some damage up into the solo laner, but SOT will not take all that much damage from the Valkyries just yet. Instead, it's Kirmi who's lost a lot of their health, but that's an ultimate now gone out of Layers, and a frenzy popped by Gamma in response. SOT down to a third HP, only needs a little bit more to get within execute range, but will not get there in time.
Watch Layers. He still has Blink available, loses out on that ultimate, so that's a good deal of his burst gone. SOT dropped low. Probably can't stick around in this team fight. He knows that Aquarius has got only eyes for him with the execute. Great play from the Valhalla Valkyries to stop that back. SOT delayed yet again and does not have teleport in his relic slot, so we'll have to walk all the way back. The Valhalla Valkyries, they've already regrouped. Only Gamma, who has taken some damage. That said, the War of Attrition might not be HP. Benny Q below 50% in that mana column. If this fight goes too much longer, he might just himself. Could pick up a blue buff, though. That'd help.
Give you a little bit of CDR as well. Can't go wrong with picking something up
Why
there.
does Benny have speed?
But you know what? Never mind. No blue buff for Benny Q. Instead, it'll just be. I thought maybe he would like consumed it, and so he'd be able to pick up that blue, but not in this case. Instead, it's the fight on the frontliners. SOT descent into madness will give him a lot of extra HP to get through here, but Aquarius can't close the distance
Fire
to get
Giant.
that ultimate. Fire Giant coming a big factor in this play. Layers finds one. Benny Q already down on the side of the Valkyries, and everybody else is falling low. It's a knock up on the Wowie. Layers will find the summon against the beats. Kirby goes back in, but Kirby is already gone. Aquarius trades out one, finds the double kill with the execute. Needs a couple of more in low threshold to get the max value out of it. But with 4 down on the Valkyries, make it only now 2 alive for the Titans. The Titans might not be able to end, but they at least get the deicide.
Seems like the Titans disagree. Cyclone Spin and Aurora are going to work their way down the middle of the map. Complete credit for that fight has got to go to Layers, who yet again goes in, drops multiple targets down to low HP, separates the fight, finds great walls, buys time for the rest of the Tartarus Titans to work their way forward. Let's see. Aurora's pretty healthy. I think they've got it.
He's got a lot. About a quarter health here on this Khepri, and Cyclone with all the damage in the world needed. One team fight is all it took for the Titans to bring themselves back in. One more team fight
Can they
to
do it?
potentially end this game.
Benny's
2
up.
seconds on Benny Q. Titan down to half HP, but with Benny spawned back in, the Titans do not have the DPS to kill this Titan. Too many towers still standing on the map. Those 3 structures giving that Titan just a little bit of extra help.
I suppose taking 50% of the Titans' HP might be worth it for the Order team, just because Fire Giant on 2 members, probably not the biggest deal. You definitely want Layers to have Fire Giant. You definitely want SOT to have it, so it would have been a long time waiting. Now, the Tartarus Titans will be forced to reset themselves. Cycle and Spin with crit can shred this Oni Fury pretty quickly, but the Valhalla Valkyries, they can do the same to the Fire Giant.
Fast regroup to the Fire Giant. Frenzy has been popped. Benny Q is the eye on target for Layers. Benny will leap away, find his stun up against Layers, loses out on the beats. Descent into madness from SOT
No way.
to try and seal the fire, but he will not do so. It's the Valkyries grabbing it, and an immediate retreat by the Chaos team. They got their prize. It's time to get out.
Man, the Tartarus Titans just regroup very slow there. I suppose Paul just doesn't respawn in time to get back to that fight. Cyclone Spin decides to go over to the Oni Fury, gets it for his team, but in trade of enhanced Fire Giant to 5 members of the Valhalla Valkyries. Not sure how valuable that is to the Tartarus Titans from here. Weakened mid-Phoenix still, because the Valhalla Valkyries so long ago were able to take out that bird. Tier 2 tower on left. 1 auto attack from just about anyone besides Gamma. We'll finish that one up. And the Valhalla Valkyries 5 strong can start their siege. Believe we will see them play through the center of the map just to try and contend with the map state the Tartarus Titans have established, having taken out the Chaos team's mid-Phoenix. We've seen many a time now what the Tartarus Titans can do on a defense situation, but they're not grouping up in the Phoenix. They're grouping up in the jungle. They're looking to catch the Valhalla Valkyries unaware. It is a large loop with Layers acting as the spearhead here, and you know what Layers can do with that blink, with that damage, with that build. If he finds anyone, he'll make short work of them.
Cyclone walked over the 1 ward. Layers goes in, finds most of Benny Q's health. The Aegis is there, but a leap out of Benny gets him away from the Kabrakan. Layers now on the run, but Paul finds Kirmi, who dove in up against 3. Now the Valkyries are losing out on one of their major frontliners.
Aquarius loses his beads. Benny Q still low HP. SOT starting to work his way around the back of this team fight. Will group up on the left-hand side. You'd think the team with enhanced Fire Giant on 5 would be the aggressors, but it's the Tartarus Titans grouping up on a tier 2. Then the Phoenix immediately afterward. 40 seconds left on Kirmi. Benny Q, no defensive relics. This is going to be a hard-fought defense.
5 versus 4. SOT very healthy on this Cthulhu. Aquarius goes in to slow down the pace of the Tartarus Titans, but Aurora with that bracer dropped back through, giving a lot of extra power
fast
to his team. Phoenix at half health and should go down soon right after. Layers going for a cheeky backdoor to try and end that one, but gets spotted by Aquarius. But it's now 5 versus 4. Titan at half health, and the Tartarus Titans with their solo laner in Descent to Madness. He's taking a lot of damage, but so is the Titan. And the Tartarus Titans pull this one back off of 2 massive team fights.
My heart goes out to the Valhalla Valkyries, who had dominated every portion of the first 20 or so minutes of this game. The Tartarus Titans, with iron wills, are able to just maintain their mentals. I don't know how they do it. That has got to be such a frustrating game to play. Losing and fighting an uphill battle for that long, are able to steal away the Fire Giant, group up, defend their base multiple times, and they prove why they're so highly valued in the SPL.
Man, the Titans have got to be thinking layers for those picks onto Benny Q in those
Layers
last
goes
couple
nuts.
of fights. If they don't kill Benny Q in that one, that mid Phoenix goes down. Maybe at least goes at a state of even there, but Layers able to find those big picks there. Paul finding a couple of his own, and maybe a couple of missteps at the end there by Kiermi and Benny Q getting caught out in those last few fights. Valhalla Valkyries do go down 2-0 to the Tartarus Titans.
And you know, we saw that Benny Q realized there was a dive attempt there. He was pre-charging the Primordial Onslaught in that jungle skirmish. Wonder if he only saw a couple of people on the map, thought it was maybe just 2 targets, but in doing so, loses out on 80% of his HP. Lucky he doesn't die. Layers goes nuts. MVP for me.
Yeah, Layers, big turnaround here for the Tartarus Titans. SOT as well over on that Cthulhu, a massive threshold for them. Tartarus Titans take it to 2-0. We're going to take it to a break and come back with the desk to break down the set.
Tick tock, you're on the clock. Give it all you got. Tick tock, before it's gone for good.
Very contested game number 2. The Tartarus Titans grab themselves a 2-0 win over the Valhalla Valkyrie, get themselves back on track here after a tough set yesterday against the Atlantis Leviathans. Valkyries, again, they show us that they have the ability to be competitive in every single game that they play. Unfortunately, some of the macro game and decision-making, team fights, things like that, just a little bit more convincing for the Titans down the stretch here. Trelly with me one final time to break this one down, and there is a lot to break down here, Trelly, because this feels like a game that the Valkyries are in control of at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And the sieges maybe is really where this game goes wrong.
Yeah, they found some success early in the duo lane. They were able to push that lead. They had pretty much all the gold they really wanted, but that end game siege was their issue. They really were not able to push into this Titans comp. They couldn't get the Phoenixes down. I mean, you got to kill the Titan to end the game, and they just were not able to do so.
That's true. And I really loved the call there for – it was Cyclone and Aurora were the last two alive after that Fire Giant fight, like considered maybe – not considered maybe trying to end the game, tried to end the game, realized that the damage wasn't quite there. But Paul on this AMC has been a lot of fun to follow along with. You know, Paul not one who's unused to being focused out in-game, and picks and bans and in-game. Up against the Leviathans, goes 2-6. Has a 5-0-11 game 1 here against the Valkyries, then an 8-7 on the AMC in game number 2. And so Paul does these massive damage numbers, but not immune to the immobility being punished a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. If you are going to pick AMC mid, there's got to be, you can't be allowed to free cast, right? There's so much damage on this pick. But as Miff highlighted on the cast, I mean, Layers was doing a great job of just going at Benny Q, making sure this Tiamat was not able to free cast as well. I mean, 30,000 damage for the Tiamat, but largely impacted by a Kabrakan constantly just blinking at you, making your life miserable. So props to Layers to have a rough early game, but then just come back strong in that late.
Yeah, about a 34,000 damage AMC, though, for Paul down the stretch here. Tartarus Titans get themselves back on track. Paul gets the AMC back on track and now stands by with me for the post-game interview. Paul, look, it was a tough set for you guys yesterday up against the Leviathans. Yeah. You get back to your winning ways against the Valkyries. Is there anything that you immediately put in to change from yesterday's set to today's set that made a big difference for you guys, or maybe just consistency playing good Smite?
Yeah, there's a couple things we were just like, we kind of trolled yesterday. We also, I mean, I was obviously trolling that game too a bit as well. But yeah, just a couple little things that we were trying to improve on for today's set, and so I think it went a bit better today.
No, it did. You got the win. And big convincing game number 1 in this set. Valkyries maybe had control of the early part of game number 2. What goes wrong for the Valkyries in game 2? Maybe what goes right for you guys in game 2 to end up grabbing that win?
That's a tough one.
Sure.
I'm not. They're up a lot of gold, but we're just winning fights. I don't really. And they got the enhanced fire giant at the end.
Right. Just team fob better?
Why did they lose? I think.
I don't know.
I think Layers got like a nice blink stun on Tiamat or something like that, or one of their backlines, and then I got a stinger, and so then they started panicking at the end. And, I think that's how we won.
How are you feeling about AMC? Final question here for you, because it feels like you can do massive damage numbers.
Yeah.
But you can also do massive death numbers potentially in these games. How's it feel piloting that pick?
Dude, it is so volatile, man.
Yeah.
Like, what was I 0-6 at one point, bro? Like,
yeah, I think, and then you go 8-7. So you
get like the first game I'm 5-0, second game 1-4 or whatever. It's like this pick, you either go so fed or you're literally getting owned like all game. So
right. Well, look, it looked good for you and the rest of the Titans down the stretch. Congrats on the win, and happy to see you guys back in the win column.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the volatility not only of the AMC, but I think just the SPL in general, Trelly. We've already seen good and bad from I think every team so far this year, and good and bad already here today. What a whirlwind of a day that we've already had. Feels like it's gone long, but somehow we've only had two sets, and both of them go 2-0s, and the results of those 2-0s may surprise you. Surprised me in our first set of the day, Trelly. You and I cast that one. Again, not surprising that the Bolts won. Bolts are a very good team, but the fact that it was as convincing as it was over the Atlantis Leviathans, make sure to go back and watch that one if you missed it. And then game 2 here, even Paul a little baffled. Like, Valk's in control, they get the FGs, they get the enhanced FGs. Like, I'm not even sure how they lost that game, and it was a big initiation from Layers that deletes Benny Q in that fight, gives the Titans the 2-0 win here. And how about this one that we've got coming up, Trelly? Jade Dragons versus the Camelot Kings will end our week here in the SPL. And standings-wise, this one becomes very important because 2-1 are the Jade Dragons. Hey, 2-1 are the Camelot Kings as well. So are the Titans and the Bolts. Seems to be a bit of a separation right now. Scarabs and Valkyries, only 3 games played, that said, compared to the 4 of a couple of the other teams. And so standings, of course, going to be very important here. One of these 2 teams, between the Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons, will find themselves in sole possession of first place. First team to reach 3 wins in this phase of the SPL. I know we're casting it. Do you have a thought, a prediction on who may end up winning this one, or do you think this one's very close?
I mean, just like we've been bringing up so much lately that the bottom tier of the SPL and the top tier is not a far gap right now. Any team is able to take another set. It really just depends. For me, the matchup I'm looking at is Pagon going to show up? Is he going to be able to, get on these hard carry characters that he's been able to succeed on so far? And that's really going to be the deciding factor, I would say.
Yeah, think about that. Pagon versus Big Man Tings. What a mid lane matchup that is. Dragons versus the Camelot Kings. A fun way to end this week in the SPL. That matchup and a whole lot more coming up next, so stick around.